One moment, one decision, and suddenly a player's World Cup journey is over, finished, erased, gone. A single FIFA ruling has ended his tournament. This is the first player to be eliminated from the 2026 World Cup, not because of what happened on the scoreboard, but because of disciplinary action away from the result itself. His name is Asim Madibo. You probably remember the incident, even if you'd rather forget it. And the chain of events that brought him to this point has divided football fans across the world, because many people are now debating a difficult question. Was FIFA punishing the foul, or was FIFA punishing the outcome? To understand that, we need to go back to where it all began, a moment most fans already know well. Canada against Qatar in Vancouver. Canada were comfortably on their way to their first ever World Cup victory, dominating the match in a 6-0 rout. Then, in the 51st minute, Madibo arrived late from behind on Canada's Ismail Kone and caused a devastating injury, a double fracture of the tibia and fibula. Kone was taken off on a stretcher, later underwent surgery, and saw his World Cup come to an immediate end. Canada manager Jesse Marsh said the sound of the bone breaking could be heard from the touchline. By every description, it was one of the most disturbing incidents of the entire tournament. Then on Wednesday, FIFA delivered its verdict, a 5-match suspension. Qatar have already been eliminated from the competition, meaning the punishment extends well beyond anything remaining in this World Cup. In practical terms, that ruling brought Madibo's tournament to a complete stop, with the remainder of the ban carrying over into matches completely unrelated to this World Cup. His campaign is over. And that's where much of the controversy begins. Your first reaction might be simple. Good. If you break someone's leg, you should be sent home. That's an understandable response, and plenty of people feel exactly that way. But this is where the situation becomes far more complicated, and where FIFA's decision starts to face serious scrutiny. Because when you go back and watch the challenge itself, separating the tackle from the horrific injury that followed, it doesn't look quite the way many people imagine. Kone pushed the ball down the line. Madibo arrived a split second late and caught the back of his leg. It was a poor challenge, a mistimed, awkward attempt to win a ball that had already moved on. But it wasn't a reckless two-footed challenge, a studs-up assault, or some deliberate attempt to injure an opponent. There was no sign of malicious intent. It was the type of late tackle you see countless times throughout a football match. The difference is that this one, through terrible misfortune, connected at exactly the wrong angle and resulted in a broken leg. And even the people directly involved seem to agree on that. The referee's initial reaction says a lot. Christian Gary first reached for a yellow card. A yellow. Only after seeing the severity of the injury did he upgrade it to a red card. Not because replays revealed a more dangerous challenge, but because the consequences were impossible to ignore. Even Canada manager Jesse Marsh, who had every reason to be upset in the moment, later admitted that he didn't believe Madibo intended for something so horrific to happen. In fact, he openly said, "I don't fault him for that." Madibo's reaction on the field painted a similar picture. He was visibly devastated, standing in tears with his hands on his head. After the match, he personally went into Canada's dressing room to apologize. Later, he even visited Ismail Kone in the hospital. There's a photo showing Kone sitting in a wheelchair while embracing him. The player who suffered the injury hugged the player responsible for it. That alone says a lot about how much intent people believed was involved. So here's the question that sits at the center of all this. If the referee's first judgment was a yellow card, if the injured player embraced him afterward, and if the injured player's own coach said, "I don't fault him," then how does that situation end with a 5-match suspension? And this is where the debate becomes uncomfortable. Many analysts have reached the same conclusion. FIFA didn't punish the tackle itself. FIFA punished the injury that came from it. That's the controversy in its simplest form. The length of the suspension appears to be based largely on how severe the damage was, rather than on how dangerous or reckless the challenge actually looked. And that's where many people see a problem. In football, the outcome of a tackle can often come down to luck. The exact same challenge, with the same timing, the same angle, and the same level of contact, might leave one player on the ground for half a minute and send another into surgery for months. When you punish intent and recklessness, you're evaluating the player's actions. When you punish the outcome alone, you're evaluating the consequences of bad fortune. And evidence for that argument arrived almost immediately. While football analysts were still discussing Modibo's suspension, another incident occurred in a separate match. Brazil's Danilo caught Scotland's Kieran Tierney with a challenge that many felt looked every bit as reckless, if not even worse. High challenge, ugly contact, but Tierney was able to get straight back to his feet. No broken leg, no devastating injury, just a yellow card. And that's where the comparison becomes difficult to ignore. A very similar type of foul produced a completely different outcome and, in turn, a completely different punishment. The only thing that changed was the severity of the injury. That's why critics argue that FIFA isn't judging the foul itself. They're judging the result. And the situation becomes even more uncomfortable for FIFA when you look at its history with suspensions. Think back to Cristiano Ronaldo. He was sent off against Ireland during qualifying and, by the rules, should have been suspended for the opening 2 matches of this World Cup. That never happened. The same goes for Argentina's Nicolás Otamendi and Ecuador's Moisés Caicedo. Both received red cards in their final qualifying matches and were expected to carry suspensions into the tournament. Instead, FIFA allowed them to play. And the explanation FIFA gave at the time was straightforward. The goal was to ensure every nation could arrive at the biggest stage in international football with its strongest possible squad available. So when a major star or an important player risks missing high-profile World Cup matches, FIFA has shown a willingness to be flexible. But when it comes to Modibo, a player without global star status, representing a team that was already heading toward elimination, and someone unlikely to influence the tournament's later rounds, that flexibility suddenly disappears. Instead, he receives a 5-match suspension. No exceptions, no reduction, no leniency. That's the part many people find hardest to accept. To them, it feels as though FIFA chose someone it could easily make an example of. Modibo has earned 64 international caps for Qatar and had never been sent off while representing his country before this incident. There isn't a record of repeated dirty play that would seem to justify such a severe punishment. The Athletic even asked FIFA directly whether there were additional factors behind the 5-match ban. The response offered nothing beyond a brief reference to serious foul play. No detailed explanation, no reasoning, just a suspension length that, to many observers, appeared to fit the headline more than the challenge itself. Now, in fairness, let's look at the strongest case FIFA could make. The laws of the game describe serious foul play as the use of excessive force or brutality, and it's reasonable to argue that if a tackle ends with a player suffering a broken leg, then the force involved must have crossed that line. Fair enough, maybe the red card was justified. The rulebook states that serious foul play carries a minimum suspension of 2 matches, and maybe adding another game could be defended as a way of reinforcing the message that dangerous tackles won't be tolerated. There's a reasonable argument for that. But 5 matches? 5 games for a challenge with no malicious intent, no previous disciplinary record, a referee whose first reaction was a yellow card, and an injured player who later embraced him in the hospital? At that point, it stops feeling like justice. It starts looking like optics. And that's really where this entire story ends up. A player made a bad challenge. The outcome was tragically worse than anyone could have imagined. He apologized. He went to the hospital. He was forgiven by the very player he injured. Yet FIFA responded with a punishment that effectively ended his World Cup and, based on its own history of inconsistent disciplinary decisions, leaves plenty of unanswered questions. Qatar still has the option to appeal, and many observers hope they will. Some believe the suspension could eventually be reduced. But right now, FIFA has done the one thing a disciplinary system should avoid at all costs. It appears to have punished the consequence rather than the action itself. 5 matches for a poor tackle, while a nearly identical challenge receives only a yellow card simply because nobody was seriously hurt. So what do you think? Does that sound like justice? Or does it sound like FIFA reacting to the headline that followed? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in the side of football's biggest decisions that rarely gets discussed in detail, you already know where to find the subscribe button.